It was an unexpected decision, and a controversial one at that. The election of Saudi Arabia to the UN's Commission on the Status of Women angered many rights activists, and they only echoed what a senior UN representative had said earlier this year.
So my concern is that the government is in fact deferring to a relatively small portion of conservative voices within the kingdom, and that in doing so, it is not only seriously restricting the rights of women, but it is obstructing the economic progress and social progress which is aimed to be achieved through the Vision 2030 process.
Vision 2030 is the brainchild of Mohammed bin Salman, Deputy Crown Prince and heir apparent to the Saudi throne. It's part of an effort to open up the conservative kingdom, principally to economic investment and the development of infrastructural projects. That's led leaders like German Chancellor Angela Merkel to support the decision. She said it would encourage Saudi leaders to move faster on reform. The kingdom ranks 141 out of 144 countries on the World Economic Forum's gender gap rating. Women cannot drive there and are dependent on their male guardians for the most trivial of things. And the few who protest face jail time, like Summer Badawi. She was locked up for 7 months for advocating for women's right to drive. Badawi says things are changing, but only because of public pressure.
Social media sites are one of the few places where Saudis can vent their anger to say we have rights to exercise their freedoms that they think is legal.
Other human rights activists agree.
There's a human rights culture growing in Saudi society. People are waking up from the extremist-induced slumber of the past 40 years. And the greatest contribution has come from social media sites like Facebook and Twitter.
A slow awakening may indeed be taking place in Saudi society. But is the kingdom really ready to take a leading role in assuring women's rights in the rest of the world? Shoaib Hassan, the Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from Riyadh by Saudi Affairs Specialist Ahmed Al Ibrahim, and in Washington, D.C., Hala Dosari. She's a Saudi women's rights activist and writer. And in Tel Aviv, human rights activist Hilal Noya. He's the executive director of United Nations Watch, UN Watch. Thanks all of you for joining us. Ahmed Al Ibrahim, let me begin with you. Does Saudi Arabia deserve to be on the UN Women's Rights Commission?
I think Saudi Arabia has progressed in the past 10 years so much. It came from nowhere to everything right now is about women. I mean, listen, the Saudi women is the solution for this country to advance so fast. Today, if you see the Saudi women, they are more progressive than the men. They are more educated, more committed, more giving, more contributing to the economy. The numbers have shown a spike in how much the Saudi women has entered the labor force, how many women own a commercial registration. The amount of the dollar wealth that the Saudi woman is managing is unprecedented. The contribution in the economy, especially in the past 5 years, you can sense. The minute the women are in these kind of fields that they are being positioned by the government right now, it's making the economy, it's making the government, it's making the private sector moves much faster. So yes, indeed, Saudi Arabia is on the right track. Saudi Arabia has a lot of ways to come into completing the whole resolution for women's rights in the kingdom. I know we have issues that contribute from the culture, and that in the progress of the government is trying to elevate the knowledge of the culture to accommodate, you know, these kind of opening for the women.
Okay.
You know, we are a country of 85 years.
Okay.
We're still young.
You made
America
your point.
took
Sure,
almost
Ahmed.
100 years in order to,
Okay, we've got a couple other guests as well. So you set out your thesis. Hala, according to Ahmed, Saudi is moving in the right direction in terms of women. So why not? As he said, we've come from nowhere to everywhere, as he put it. Does that ring true for you, Hala?
Of course not. So if he's referring to the Vision 2030 and the economic participation of women, it sits now at 18%, one of the lowest in the world. The Saudi government is putting forward participation in international government or in intergovernmental organizations only as a part of the PR and improving the public perception of Saudi Arabia as set forth and as an objective in the Vision 2030 by the Ministry of Culture and Information, but not necessarily reflected in how Saudi Arabia adhere and respect the human rights in general and the women's rights in particular. So women's, as you've mentioned, have been lobbying for more than a year, and for years actually, on simple basic rights like the right to commute, the right to travel, all of these issues which restrict their full realization of potential, their full engagement in the workforce. The highest number of women in the workforce only happened because women were allowed to work as cashiers and in the retail sector. It's not because women now are part of the decision-making. There is only less than 5% projection of women participation in decision-making. And this is really very small compared to any country, let alone to a country as Saudi Arabia with its huge number of women who graduated outnumber men in graduation from universities.
Yeah, those are
so
some
this
strong
is very
points.
much basically
some
contradicting to what the vision is promising.
Yeah. Okay. So Hilal, those who voted for Saudi Arabia to be on the commission, they basically wanted to encourage Saudi Arabia to put them on the right track. Do you buy that?
No, absolutely not. The fact is that electing Saudi Arabia to be on the United Nations Women's Rights Commission is like picking the fox to guard the chickens as he still wipes the feathers from his mouth from his last meal. I want your audience to understand how absurd it is when Belgium just admitted now that they elected Saudi Arabia. They effectively disclosed to the world that they sold out their principles of human rights for political gain. We know that the Belgians were forced to admit that not only did they vote for Saudi Arabia, but they gave instructions to inform the Saudis that they voted for them. That means it's a political deal was made, trading votes.
Yeah, we've been looking at your tweets and of course, the Twitter storm after this. And you tweeted, Hilal, that the Belgian Foreign Minister, Didier Reynders, said they voted the Saudis onto the UN Women's Rights Commission to try and make them into better feminists. You got some interesting replies. Let's go through some of them. One said, ridiculous, what's next? Electing Syria's Assad as High Commissioner of the UN Refugee Agency? Does he understand that just being a feminist, this is another one, is a criminal offense over there? And then this one's really interesting. The anti-logic statement of the century. Feminists are blind to all forms of misogyny in every country outside the Western world. Let's pose that to Hala. Hala, is there racism of low expectations here where some Western feminists maybe go hard at misogyny in their countries, but maybe give countries like Saudi Arabia a free pass?
Of course, I do understand the intergovernmental organization and the UN in particular is now representing an icon of political relations more than real promoters of human rights and the values that they enshrine or that they promote, presumably promote. For activists, for feminists, so for people who are trying to advance women's rights, this is such a disappointing fact, basically. A lot of effort has been done in promoting our causes through the official channels, through intergovernmental organizations, the Human Rights Council and the CEDAW committees, and we have seen now that this is not something that is respected, and it only points to how much the process of the UN is really contradicting the mere values that they should promote.
Yeah, Ahmed, what the other two guests seem to suggest is that because Saudi Arabia is powerful and rich, other nations are placating it. It's not because of any sort of organic evolution within the kingdom. What do you think?
I think totally wrong. Saudi Arabia won the United Nations Security Council seat, and on the day of winning it, Saudi Arabia rejected the seat. So it's not a matter of Saudi Arabia, it's really playing this game and everybody's putting this scenario, oh, and Saudi Arabia is going to do this and going to do movement. You guys are making it bigger than its appeal. The United Nations, if we won the seat, we won it.
No, we're not making it bigger.
If we don't want it, it's irrelevant.
No, that's not true.
No, but let me tell you one thing. Let me tell you one thing.
No, that's
if Saudi
not true.
Arabia,
we
for
have
example, on the
documents of
driving
Saudi
of
trades.
issue.
There are WikiLeaks documents of Saudi trades. WikiLeaks produced documents of the Saudi ambassador
This is
making
irrelevant.
deals with
We
Russia
rejected
and
the
France
we rejected the United Nations Security Council. It doesn't matter to us. You can pull the seat and take it and give it to any country. What we're going to do for our country, it's what we're going to do for our people, or what the government is doing for the people. If, for example, for driving and guardianship, if the Saudi wants to close this subject, they would have brought Gallup polls from the United States, and they start launching them in each and every corner in the kingdom. You're going to find the ratio of women or people accepting women to drive is 1 to 1,000. This society is conservative. The people still are not ready to do that. What the government is trying to do is to speed up all this by controlling the society.
Okay, so
I cannot yank things. I
Hala
cannot change the wheel of a car while it's speeding.
Okay.
You know, and one more thing.
Please,
for Hala, please, the
Ahmed.
fact that you just said is wrong. We have a lot of women in the engineering, we have in filming, we have doctors, we have philosophers, we have Lubna Liyan, we have Rima Benza, we have
and people, Hala addressed this as well. There are a lot of educated
women,
people.
how come we're a very conservative society? So that's exactly, actually, he himself has actually contradicted his own thesis, because if there are all those kinds of women who are enrolled in education and higher education and unconventional, basically, professions, how come we're conservative societies? Yeah. And how come women in rural areas
so
are driving
let me ask you a question. How many
people,
of those educated women that you're talking about, they represent the Saudi society? What, they are 7%? They are 17%? The government, there is a majority.
It doesn't matter. The government has a commitment to promote gender equality. It doesn't matter.
So what the government is trying to do is trying to do it by ease.
You're granting
look
rights.
At the facts. Look at the history of the United States. How long it took women to get their rights.
You can't keep on looking at the history. You can't look at this. Once the government decided to stop the religious police from patrolling the streets, once the government decided to put forward, I can't really speak like that.
It doesn't matter. Listen, if I were you, I would look at the cup half full.
Please give her a chance.
But let me say one thing, Ramon. By Saudi Arabia,
please give her a chance. Hala.
I can't really hear him, because if you go, yeah, please, just give me a time and then we can respond to each other. The idea that the government is trying to, is a very progressive government, and the only hindrance for the government to stop enacting and promoting rights is how conservative and retarded the people are. There are a number of activists from very conservative background who have supported women's rights and are now in prison. And the other thing is that the government role is not to follow whatever the society is being doing. The government role is to promote rights, is to protect and foster rights. Those who are not accepting to drive, they're not forced to. But the government is supposed to create the enabling environment for the people. And if the government is trying to do that outside but not in home, this is hypocrisy. This is just hypocrisy.
Okay.
So I can't really say that this is a good argument.
Okay, Ahmed, I want to bring in Hillel.
It's the role of the government to uphold and respect those values.
Look,
otherwise,
Hillel,
they shouldn't be engaged in that.
Hillel, going back to the vote, the Belgian Prime Minister, Charles Michel, said, I regret the vote because there was a lot of pushback. Do you accept his apology? And do you think that they won't do this sort of thing again?
Well, what we're asking is we accept the apology. It's always good when a country recognizes they did something terrible, provided that they show evidence that they truly are remorseful. And the best thing that they could do to compensate for the terrible action that they and 46 other countries took, possibly Sweden, possibly Norway, possibly Ireland, is to introduce a resolution in June, next month, at the Human Rights Council, where Belgium is a member, to spotlight the gross and systematic abuses of Saudi Arabia against women, against people like Raif Badawi, innocent blogger who called for a free society, was thrown in prison, 10 years jail sentence, 1,000 lashes, 50 of which he received, the rest not yet. He should be released immediately. So we want to see Belgium and the other countries who may have voted for this to introduce a resolution and to consider removing Saudi Arabia from the Human Rights Council. Contrary to what the gentleman just said from Saudi Arabia cares very much to be elected. WikiLeaks documents, which we published, show that the Saudi ambassador in New York was doing trade deals, a letter with Russia, where the Saudi ambassador said, "Dear Russia, we hereby trade votes. We will vote for you, Vladimir Putin, and you will vote for us." We saw these deals made with numerous countries, including perhaps France and England, where we saw evidence of negotiations, and they haven't been They haven't been denied. So the fact that Saudi Arabia is trading these things means they want this false badge of international legitimacy to hide the terrible crimes that they're doing against women and their own people. These crimes are not conservative crimes. You know, Ambassador Nikki Haley of the United States, she's a conservative. Those who support beheading and forcing women to live under gender apartheid, that's not conservative. That's fundamentalist, Wahhabist, radical, in violation of every single universal human right guaranteed by the United Nations and international conventions, which Saudi Arabia claims to belong to. So either, sir, you belong and commit to those human rights obligations, or you don't. And if, as you say, you don't respect those human rights obligations, you have no business being on the world's Women's Rights Commission telling women around the world how they can get empowered or gender equality. It's absolutely a disgrace. And that's what Belgium recognized, and that's why they have to apologize. And we want to see a resolution in June to remove Saudi Arabia from the Human Rights Council.
Ahmed, at the heart of this, there's a fundamental paradox, isn't it? And Hala has called it out as well, where you have women who can maybe even have PhDs in economics or engineering or whatever you want to name it. But they are exactly the same as every other woman in Saudi Arabia, where they can't drive, they can't travel without a mahram, they can't do certain jobs. They still don't have the rights they need, no matter how well educated they are. And you point that out, and that's a great thing that they're very well educated. But what does it mean when they don't have fundamental rights? The other two guests are right, aren't they, Ahmed?
I don't think, listen, we are not the perfect nation when it comes to women's rights and everything. We have only two issues, and two issues only, is women driving, which has been over-exercised, and the guardianship. And I agree with you. Women need to commute to their offices.
No, there's gender apartheid. Women in restaurants can't sit in the same places. There's complete gender apartheid in South Africa. There's many more issues. Women in restaurants cannot sit in the same places as men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ahmed?
Imran, this is the
women
problem.
Are not equal
most
under
of the
law.
people
Women
he'll give Ahmed a chance.
There's complete gender apartheid.
Can I finish?
Against
I
women.
did not interrupt you. Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I
Finish,
finish?
Ahmed.
I did not interrupt you, so hold on to your horses. So what I'm saying is, both of you gentlemen, probably they're doing their search on Google. If today, Imran, and I invite you to come to Saudi Arabia and sit in the restaurant and look, if the men are sitting in a separate gender, go to the entertainments that is happening in Saudi Arabia and look at that and look how people are mixing and mingling with respect. We are not going to have people blowing up DJs or trying to do whatever they're trying to do. We are going to progress within the Saudi people likeness and what our culture accepts.
Okay.
We are not going to follow any Western country.
And that sort of emphatically puts your point in a nutshell.
So let me tell you one thing.
Hold on.
Let me tell you one thing.
I want to give Hala the final word.
And the educated
we have
people.
one Saudi woman on this panel, so I want to give her the final word, if you don't mind, Ahmed. Hala, you're the only Saudi woman on this panel.
Thank you.
Final word.
The thing is, what is he saying about the progress? About the progress is not from the government. The progress is from the people. And what happens when one of the women is challenging the status quo and trying to earn the money and join the workforce?
The Commission of Entertainment belongs to the government, which is belong to MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. No, it does. No, please say your facts right. I accept criticism, but put facts to your words. All the facts you said, all the numbers you said are
who are the conservative
wrong.
people who
Probably
are
you did not visit the kingdom for the past 20 years.
And be on the Women's Rights Commission. That's crazy.
Okay. Let's give Hala 20 seconds to wrap us up. Hala, go ahead. I won't let the other guys interrupt.
Well, basically what I'm saying is that the argument that people are not ready for women's rights or for human rights is a false argument. People have been aspiring for that, lobbying for that, advocating for that, and the responsibility of the government to respect the rights. The government is the authority that arrests women who are trying to join the workforce, who are trying to challenge the status quo, and the government is the one arresting women who drive. It's not the society. And I think...
Not true.
So the government is not arresting women who are driving.
It's been good to have all of you on. I hope we can do it again. Thanks so much for joining us.